Welcome back, everybody. This is day 7, if I'm not mistaken, so there we go. A whole week. Imagine that. So today, while I was zooming around the warehouse, which shall remain unnamed, and it is not this warehouse, this is an old hat, I started thinking about a couple of points. So this is what I do. Here's my notebook. My usual uh, I guess worksheet is right in front of me, and I can let my mind wander. Because there's something about having a mundane job that you can let your mind be free and think about, things that go along in the world and how they affect you and how you can affect them. Like the great chaos and the intentionality of your local life and all that kind of stuff. I was thinking about the point that Art Lindsay made about the man was made for the garden in Eden. So you take that one and then you contrast it with when Christ says, Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So I try to spin those two around in my head for a minute. And I guess the conclusion I came up with was Sabbath is a time. It's a specific reference point in time. I mean, the garden is a place. The garden is like the place of origin. It's always like the place you want to get to eventually through the hero's story. You know what goodness is and relaxing life. If that becomes challenged, you want to somehow get back there, even if you're changed for the better, maybe. So I think it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition, sort of, with man is made for time. That's like the knower between the chaos, the unknown, the known, and the knower. The knower, the point where those two mingle. This becoming that, because chaos becoming from is pure potential becoming something that's ordered and straight. Well, how does that work? That has to be, in order for that not to just be nothing, there has to be a process, and the process has to have meaning. And that's almost like for consciousness to exist, finitude must be in a place of permanence and a place of growing permanence. Because if you just know the totality of something, then does the middle part really matter? This actually came through fruition after talking about we're talking about fighting movies. So I have a friend at work, and I'm like, hey, what'd you do this weekend? He usually watches movies. He's like, I watched The Equalizer and The Equalizer 2. Now, I personally have not seen the entirety of those movies, but I've seen the fight scenes because they're good. And then he's like, I also watched the two Bourne movies. I'm like, oh, there's 3 of them. And then I asked him about John Wick because that's my point of reference for a lot of movies these days. And he's like, I haven't seen the John Wick. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're moving out. You're missing out. So, and I'm like, Equalizer, it's like, all right, man, you maybe he's 10 years older than me, and he's faster than me, and he beats everybody like that, like all the time. And that, like, Equalizer is kind of like it's, sure, they're all unrealistic, right? They're all mythic characters that are just like this high pristine thing, like their will they can enact in reality, and they can do it because they practice how to enact their will into reality, to end life or whatever that looks like. Because that's what we do. We if you want to enact power, you have to challenge someone's vulnerability and succeed in overcoming them, and they don't overcome yours. So I'm like, well, if I had to rank the 3, John Wick would be here, and then you have Jason Bourne, and Jason Bourne might actually appear, but not really. I'll tell you why in a minute. And then The Equalizer, and there's a whole bunch in between. Like the newer James Bond movies would probably be like a little bit above The Equalizer, maybe below. I don't know, because they get pretty fantastic after a while. So the Bourne movies are pretty awesome, but they're not as incredible. So John Wick himself is a character who, like, he's just a scary dude. He's a character that is the epitome of what he should be. Like we all have these images that are on us. Father, worker, son, whatever that is. So what does the perfect of that look like? And John Wick is like the perfect assassin or the perfect killer. Like he is that. And the reason why I put John Wick up top is because you see the training he does. Like, it's intentional training. It's not that he's this magical dude that he can do everything. Like, I think one of the movies opens up where he's actually training, driving his car. And the new one coming up, you see him hitting a makiwara board with his fist. That's something I do to train, okay? He's training. It's not like this guy just lays down in bed all the time and then wakes up and he's Superman. It's something that's hard fought, and he gets injury and he gets tired. The Bourne movies are like right below that. Especially the first one, but definitely the second one. When Jason Bourne's doing the fight scenes, I'm sitting there with my, you know, decades of martial arts experience critiquing the fight. And I'm like, that was amazing. Those guys are like, there's no rules in that. They use what they need to use, including their bodies, to strike. And John Wick does the same thing. And I played the Bourne fight scenes back again because I think they're like 5-10 minutes long each, but they're like a minute and 30 seconds. Like every fight's like super short, but and the camera's all shaky. That's a benefit. You also get a John Wick screenplays. You get a steady camera and you see what he does, but he also makes tactical good choices. Now, barring the constant headshots all the time, that you can actually get. You can get that, and this is a place where people get when if you look at people that are professional marksmen, they can get up here. They really can. When it comes to marksmanship and when it comes to speed, some people can get ridiculous fast. So there's one scene in John Wick 2 where he pulls a gun out, shoots like 5 people before they get a chance to even pull theirs out. Well, there's reasons for that. And if you're that fast of a marksman and you practice constantly, that's the result. So I think that's one of the reasons why I view John Wick as even higher. And then there's other scenes where you see him like doing something and only the front 2 knuckles are bloodied. As opposed, and maybe the third one, but I mean, when I punch the Makawara board, you can see my front 2 knuckles are calloused. They should be anyway. That's what you hit with. You hit with the front 2. It's like your whole power of your arm becoming a sniper rifle shot instead of a shotgun that's going out. And that's how you devastate power, even to the body. And John Wick doesn't do any of these flashy moves. He's a 56-year-old man. 57 these days? I don't know how Keanu Reeves is. So how do those link up? Well, you look at the end game, right? So in Denzel Washington, you don't see much of that training. Denzel Washington, geez. The Equalizer. You see like none of it. You just see these professionals. One's an excellent sniper. You see a whole bunch of stuff going on. Where this guy's obviously an excellent fighter. You don't see him training. At least I don't think so. And then Jason Bourne, he kind of has a pass. But then John Wick, he receives battle damage. And I know like the other characters, they're not totally immune to the fight per se, but it's way more. John Wick's way more gritty, and it still goes along that philosophy. Like if you're incapable of doing violence, you're at the mercy of everyone else who can. Now I think that where John Wick suffers specifically is the lack of story besides the first movie. Like when he loses his dog, it's like, oh man, they killed the dog too. Jeez, it's terrible. And the backstory is kind of like something that's assumed, because oftentimes what you have to do is you have to build up a reason this person... It's like Batman versus Superman. When I watched the movie, that was intense. When I watched the individual fight scene outside of the context of the movie, I could, so? Well, of course that happens. Like, you're not invested in it, so... You're not invested so much in the character of John Wick in the first one. It seems like kind of shallow. Because you weren't with him when he went through the stages of death of his wife. You're there with the dog in the aftermath, and already like the sunken feeling of loss, and obviously the transcendent factor of God is not brought into it very much. It's supposed to be about fighting, so I can totally understand that. So the reason those two mesh, the whole Sabbath being made for man, time being made for man, finitude, specific events should have extra importance in man as opposed to specific objects. It's the same thing that's in the book of Exodus. It's like there's a specific time you should honor. Not the moon, not the sun, not objects, but events in time that are significant. And the reason why they're significant is because it's part of the process. Like you can look at mankind having like a mythic psychological build. Joseph Campbell wrote a lot about this. A mythic psychological build in order to strive and aim for something. Now, if we just have the totality of us now, and we don't research how we got here, we will lose respect for the founding blocks of our thinking itself. And why is that important? Well, if things shut down, knowing why will help us get through anyhow, and that's Nietzsche. If you have a good reason why you want to make things right, or why this certain moral code, or this specific moral code, or I would say absolute morality exists, and why it should be followed, finding the path in history on how you got there is very important. That's like the why. Because we're all not in heaven right now, obviously. We're still going through things, obviously. And so the story, the middle part, the growth, is significant. We all have memories from our childhood that we would say, this is something C.S. Lewis brought up. He said there's always a point in your life where you can think about it and you say, that was probably the most joyous part of my life. I don't have any bad memories around that. For me, it's one of the best. My best friend probably gave me a pack of magic cards. We were just in wonder of what was going to be in there. The first time it happened, the very first time. And when I talk to people long enough, eventually everybody can find this moment in their life, and that's like your hedonic moment. It's the point where you want to take that moment and share it with others. Not only share it with others, but recreate it as best you can in like a fractaling world, if that makes sense. And then the growth process, you're actually aiming for the totality of joy that was in the past. So like your aim, because you need a point of reference in the past which built you and gives you a reference point of joy. And then you also aim for that, but you have to go forward so it looks a little different. You just try to recreate it. That's also in parenting. It's also in martial arts. It's also in any kind of apprenticeship. It's also in video games. You play more games, read more books. You want more stories to kind of build on and recreate that feeling you had, because you just can't get enough of it. It's like an eternal grasping for more, an eternal grasping for adventure. So anyway, those have been my thoughts today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Click the like button, subscribe to see more in the future. I'm trying to make the thumbnails a little bit more eye-catching and figure some things out. But we'll see how things go. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you later.